Welcome to my installment agreements video. Before we get into talking about installment agreements, as with all my videos, I'm just going to give you a quick disclosure that no two taxpayers have the same tax problems. It's rare to see two taxpayers have the exact same tax problems and the exact same solutions. So therefore, all the information I'm giving you here is really in a generalized manner so that you can look at your specific situation. And remember, the design of these videos is for you to look at your situation with what you're looking at here and then reach out and take advantage of the free 20-minute consultation and talk to me about what your specific problems are. Now, installment agreements are pretty straightforward instruments, and there's two types of main installment agreements, and then the second type breaks out even further. The first type is short-term installment agreements, which are typically referred to as like 180-day rules. They can go beyond 6 months, up to a year, but typically it's a year and under that short-term installment agreements fall. They're pretty straightforward. If you are up to date on your tax return filings and you do owe money and you're able to take care of whatever the tax balance is within the 180 days, that's the most advantageous position to be in. And many times the IRS is going to work with you on any accrued penalties and interest. So now I'm going to talk about the second installment agreements, which are called full pay installment agreements. And these basically break out into then two subcategories, which are full pay installment agreements and partial pay installment agreements. And basically, these long-term installment agreements are meant to span beyond what's going to go a year, essentially, okay? And you file a form in many cases, unless you're a low income tax earner, there's a fee that's associated with filing the form. There's going to be criteria. All of your tax returns will have to be up to date and filed, whether you were able to pay or not. They're going to actually want all of your tax returns filed, much like the other videos with like the offer and compromise. There is going to be criteria that goes all the way through this, essentially. So some of the paperwork that they'll ask for, that they're going to want you to prove, possibly in asking for installment agreements, is some of the similar paperwork that you would see that gets filed in the offer and compromise. And I make that note because in some cases here, an offer and compromise with a full pay installment agreement and or a partial pay installment agreement sometimes can happen in a negotiation. Usually the installment agreements can go quicker on either they accept it or reject it versus what the offer and compromise. So if you do that, you might be adding more time, but it might be worth it in certain scenarios. And again, each individual situation is different. Could be worth it to one person, it might not be worth it to the next person. Okay, so in addition to what they call the full pay installment agreement, that is usually like a long-term installment payment plan, they have a partial pay installment agreement. And the partial pay installment agreement is a little bit more in depth. Be prepared that you probably will have to prove what your financial situation is for partial pay installment agreements. And therefore, it will look very similar to maybe some of the stuff that if you were doing an offer and compromise that you'd have to do for an offer and compromise, essentially. So the big wow factor, or the it thing that is worth talking about with the partial pay installment agreement is essentially, unlike a full pay installment agreement, you could possibly negotiate with the IRS to make payments all the way up to what is called the collection statute expiration date, which is the IRS's ability to actually legally collect money from you up to the statute of limitations point, essentially, okay? And then after that, any money that you would owe, essentially, they would have no ability to collect it from you, and they waive their rights. Essentially, this de facto partial pay installment agreement is a de facto like settlement agreement. So it's almost like a version of an offer and compromise itself. So it could be a useful tool. I just want to mention that on that. So with installment agreements, they usually suspend the time that they have to collect against you while you're asked for these installment agreements, and usually time is tolling. For which is another way to say suspend time for them to collect against you. Certain situations they will, somewhat cease accruing interest while that's going on as well. And then whether they reject or accept the installment agreement, they usually have a 30-day window afterwards that the suspension of time for the collection status expiration date is suspended for, is usually like 30 days. And then the same thing, which it basically means is that there would be 30 days before they start collection activity against you again. Okay. And then they would, usually suspend accrued interest for that 30 days too. So that's basically installment agreements. Some of the stuff with the offer and compromise many times will go along with this. So remember, even though you're taking a look at this video, okay, this is something that with the installment agreements, this could attach with an offer and compromise. So you might want to go back and review that as well.